Brown eyes, the original genetic power setting, tightened. Brown eyes aren't the default because they're boring. They're the default because the genetics behind them work almost everywhere. Brown eye color comes from high melanin production, controlled mainly by the OCA2 and HERC2 genes, along with several supporting genes that fine-tune pigment levels. Instead of one dramatic mutation, brown eyes are the result of multiple genes working together, which makes them extremely stable across generations. That stability matters. High melanin protects the eye from ultraviolet light, reduces internal light scatter, and lowers long-term damage to the retina. From a genetic standpoint, brown eyes are the visual system's safe mode, reliable under stress. This is why brown eyes dominate globally. They survived intense sun, dust, long days outdoors, and aging better than lighter eye colors. Evolution didn't pick brown eyes for looks, it picked them because they kept vision dependable. Genetically, brown eyes are also dominant. If one parent passes on strong melanin genes, they usually override lighter variants. Brown eyes didn't spread because they were trendy. They spread because they refused to fail. Blue eyes, the genetic glitch that went viral. Blue eyes exist because a gene decided to take a very bold risk about 10,000 years ago. And somehow it worked. Genetically, blue eyes aren't caused by blue pigment at all. They come from a mutation near the OCA2 and HERC2 genes, which control how much melanin your body puts into the iris. That mutation basically turned the melanin dial way down. With very little pigment, light enters the eye and scatters, bouncing around instead of being absorbed. That scattering makes the eyes look blue, the same reason the sky looks blue. No dye, just physics doing a magic trick. Here's the wild part. Almost everyone with blue eyes shares the same ancient ancestor. It's not a common trait that popped up everywhere. It's one genetic copy-paste that spread fast because it didn't cause problems, and humans liked how it looked. Functionally, this low pigment makes blue eyes more sensitive to light and faster to adjust in the dark. The trade-off is glare. A lot of glare. Your eyes see everything, sometimes too much of it. Blue eyes aren't optimized. They're a successful mutation that refused to disappear. If this is already making way too much sense, hit subscribe. We explain your body with real science, not zodiac charts. Green eyes, the genetic balancing act. Green eyes are what happens when your genes can't fully commit and somehow create something rare. Genetically, green eyes come from a very specific balance of melanin, not a unique green pigment. They sit between blue and brown in terms of pigment levels, controlled by the same OCA2 and HERC2 genes, but tuned just differently enough to change how light scatters. With moderate melanin, some light is absorbed and some is scattered. The result is green, a color that can shift depending on lighting, clothing, and even pupil size. That's why green eyes sometimes look gray, hazel, or gold. The genetics are stable, but the optics are flexible. Green eyes are rare because this balance is hard to inherit. Too much melanin and the eyes turn brown. Too little and they turn blue. Green only appears when the genetic signals land in a very narrow window. Functionally, green eyes sit in the middle. They handle brightness better than blue eyes, but don't filter light as strongly as brown eyes. They're adaptable but picky. Green eyes didn't spread widely because they weren't the safest option. They stuck around because they didn't cause problems, and genetics allowed it. Okay, here's where it gets weird. Hazel eyes, the genetic shapeshifter. Hazel eyes are what happen when your genes say, let's keep our options open. Genetically, hazel eyes are still controlled by the same main eye color genes, OCA2 and HERC2, but with uneven melanin distribution across the iris. Instead of one consistent pigment level, hazel eyes have patches of higher and lower melanin, often mixed with brown, green, or gold tones. That uneven pigment changes how light scatters, which is why hazel eyes can look green one day, brown the next, and occasionally gold just to confuse everyone. The color isn't changing, the lighting is interacting differently with the pigment pattern. Hazel eyes aren't rare because the genes are rare. They're rare because the combination and placement of pigment has to line up just right. It's less about how much melanin you have, and more about where it ends up. Functionally, hazel eyes sit between green and brown. They filter light better than blue eyes, adapt faster to darkness than dark brown eyes, and handle mixed lighting well. They're flexible but inconsistent. Hazel eyes aren't indecisive. They're genetically complex. Gray eyes, the light scatter hack. Gray eyes look like someone turned the color saturation down and said, "That's enough." Genetically, gray eyes are caused by very low melanin, similar to blue eyes, but with a key difference: how the collagen fibers in the iris are arranged. Those fibers scatter light in a different pattern, which washes out color and creates that silvery gray appearance. There is no gray pigment in the eye. Just like blue eyes, gray eyes rely on light scattering, but the structure of the iris spreads light more evenly. That's why gray eyes can look pale silver, stormy, or even slightly green depending on lighting. Gray eyes are rare because this exact combination of low pigment and specific iris structure doesn't happen often genetically. It's not a single mutation. It's a precise setup. Functionally, gray eyes are very sensitive to light. They let in a lot of brightness, which helps in dim conditions but makes glare and strong sunlight uncomfortable. Sunglasses aren't optional. They're mandatory equipment. Gray eyes don't block light, they redistribute it. Amber eyes, the genetic wildcard. Amber eyes look like your genetics went off script and somehow nailed it. Unlike most eye colors, amber eyes aren't caused by light scattering alone. They come from a high concentration of pheomelanin, which reflects yellow and gold tones instead of absorbing light like brown eyes do. This pigment balance involving the OCA2 and HERC2 genes gives amber eyes their solid golden or copper color. Real pigment, not an optical trick. That's why amber eyes are extremely rare in humans. Functionally, amber eyes excel at contrast and motion detection in daylight, but are more sensitive to harsh brightness and glare. Amber eyes aren't subtle. They're genetically loud in the quietest way possible. Central heterochromia, the genetic ring glitch. Central heterochromia is when your eyes look like they have a built-in bullseye. And no, it's not a filter. Genetically, this happens when melanin distribution changes during eye development, not because of a separate eye color gene. The same genes that control eye color, mainly OCA2 and HERC2, are still in charge, but they don't distribute pigment evenly across the iris. Instead, the area closest to the pupil gets more melanin while the outer iris gets less. That creates a visible ring, often gold, amber, or brown, surrounded by blue, green, gray, or hazel. This isn't two eye colors competing. It's one eye color with uneven pigment placement. The genes did their job, just not symmetrically. Central heterochromia is relatively uncommon because pigment usually spreads evenly as the eye forms. When it doesn't, you get this ring defect, which is harmless and stable throughout life. Functionally, these eyes behave like their base color. The ring doesn't change vision, sensitivity, or eye health. It's visual flair, not a performance upgrade. Central heterochromia didn't evolve for function. It exists because genetics sometimes prioritize interesting over uniform. Complete heterochromia? When your eyes didn't get the same memo. Complete heterochromia happens when each eye develops with different melanin levels. The same eye color genes, mainly OCA2 and HERC2, are involved, but pigment production diverges during early development. This usually comes from random variation, genetic mosaicism, or rarely an inherited mutation. It's present from birth and almost always harmless. Functionally, each eye behaves like its own color type, and your brain blends the signals without trouble. Complete heterochromia didn't evolve for advantage. It exists because biology aims for functional, not symmetrical. Red and violet eyes, when pigment is basically missing. Red and violet eyes look fake because your genes skipped pigment almost entirely. These eye colors are linked to albinism, where melanin production is very low due to genes like TYR and OCA2 not working normally. There's no red or violet pigment. The color comes from light reflecting off blood vessels inside the eye. With little melanin to block light, brightness passes straight through, making glare intense and vision more sensitive. These eyes don't offer visual advantages. They require protection and careful light management. They exist because pigment never showed up to do its job. Your eye color isn't a personality quiz result. It's genetics and physics doing their thing, so subscribe for more real science that explains what your body's been quietly doing this whole time.